this thing casts good. Spinner baiting? There we go. Chatterbait. It's a good fish. Couldn't catch up with it. I was stumbling and stumbling and stumbling. Nice little. What's up, everybody? It's Joe Simpson. It is 5:05 a.m. It is very early. I'm just trying to get one out early this morning because I'm going to go road trip with the wife and go see my daughter at college. And we're going to leave around 8 o'clock. Doesn't leave me a lot of time, so it's not going to be a bang-up video, but I am going to cover a couple things I think you'll find interesting. And let's talk about it. This is called the Baby Muskrat, or I think it's the Baby Muskrat from CL8 Baits. C, the letter L, 8 Baits. And they make the Mighty Mouse that I've showed you before. They make the Clacker, which I've done a video on before. They make some really cool baits. So if you're looking for some kind of wake bait or a swim bait, check them out. Their prices are reasonable. They're not in the hundreds of dollars, although this was kind of expensive. I just thought it was a cool novelty. It's a jointed body. It's a wake bait, but it will swim down a foot or two if you pull it hard enough. It's got like a carbon looking blade on the front. It's got it looks like a number 2 treble hooks. These, I don't know what size. They're big, they're sharp, they're really good. And this tail is pretty long. This tail could be used as a rubber worm, for fishing. If you ever need a black tail or a different colored tail, I think inside of this body is a corkscrew mechanism where you can just take your rubber device and corkscrew it in there to replace it. It's got really lifelike looking whiskers. It's a really big bait. And, I used to think fish wouldn't hit baits like that until I went to Georgia and I caught a 7-pound, 11-ounce bass. And that kind of said, oh, now I see why people, use baby ducks and rats and things like that. Because I think if it fits in the fish's mouth, those bass will eat it. So let's talk a little bit about bladed swim jigs. The other day I was on eBay and I saw some really interesting hand-tied jigs, and this guy also did his own handmade bladed swim jigs. And as I was looking at these bladed swim jigs, I'm like, well, they're chatterbaits. They look just like chatterbaits. And so I picked up the phone and called Pat. I said, dude, what's the difference between a chatterbait and a bladed swim jig? He's like, none. And I'm like, oh. And he goes, well, one can have a wobbly head or a loose hook or something like that. He goes, but for all intents and purposes, we call chatterbaits because I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, somebody out there probably has the facts. I think because Z-Man called it a chatterbait. So just like Xerox called it a Xerox copy, and we took that de facto term and just ran with it. And now everybody says, oh, go make a Xerox copy. They don't do that much anymore because it's kind of lost its flair. But back in the day, everybody knows what I'm talking about. If you said, hey, go make a Xerox of this, and you're on a Fujitsu copier, it had nothing to do with Xerox, but yet we called it a Xerox copy. The chatterbait is different than some bladed swim jigs, but a lot of bladed swim jigs are very similar, if not the same. And then there's several versions of the chatterbait. There's jackhammers, and there's chatterbait classic, and then there's a chatterbait special, and a chatterbait this, and a chatterbait that. Honestly, if you're just getting into chatterbaits, go to Walmart, pull one off the shelf for $3 or $4 or whatever, and get started there. What I find different with the store-bought, cheaper brands of chatterbaits is their components are different. Their hooks rust out a little bit quicker. The Jackhammer and the Thunder Cricket, which are the expensive versions of the chatterbait, tend to start kicking a little faster and wiggling faster and have more consistency. And I just saw a good video from Bass HQ, and he gave you 3 good tips on what to do with chatterbaits. Let me just show you one real quick before we go too far. This is a chatterbait. This is a jackhammer. And you can see it has a real nice hook. It's got the head, a skirt trailer, and basically it's a bladed swim jig. I mean, it's a jig, and there's importance to why we call it that. A jig, you would normally fish with no blade, and you throw it in next to structure, and you bounce it off the ground, drag it across the bottom, whatever you do with the jig. A bladed swim jig, it makes this thing move through the water. So when you're reeling it in, it looks like a fish kicking back and forth. And it has the same jig body and the same skirt, but it kicks and looks completely different. But it's not to say if you're in a situation and you've got some good structure and you've got a chatterbait tied on, and I've heard people say this, you can drop this thing over next to that tree and let it go hit the bottom and bounce it off the bottom and work it just like a jig if you want to. You can do that. And the one thing Bass HQ does is he talks about varying retrieve with these baits. A lot of people, just like they used to with the whopper plopper, they throw it out there and they just reel it in, reel it in, reel it in, reel it in, and it would just like consistently just do whatever it does, which is great. You're going to catch fish occasionally on that kind of a retrieve. And I'm not saying occasionally, you're going to catch fish on that kind of retrieve. But if you yo-yo your retrieve, like pull it and then reel down to it, pull it, reel down to it, causing that bait to kind of swim and sink and swim and sink. Those swim and sink and pause and starts are going to cause bass to react a little bit more. You can also just throw it out, let it hit the bottom, and then you can swim it up off the bottom and then just let it hit the bottom again. And you can swim it up off the bottom. You could throw it out and jig it around a little bit before you reel it in. You can do all kinds of things, honestly. You can just, whatever your mind can come up with, honestly can be something you can get a good bite with. The other thing you want to consider is throwing it into areas that feel like you're going to get in trouble, meaning you're going to get snagged. Throw it around trees, throw it around wood. These baits are more weedless than most lures. They're not as good as a spinnerbait, but they're better than like a square bill. They're going to get through the stuff a little bit easier. Grab yourself some bladed swim jigs or a chatterbait or whatever you want to call it. Put your favorite trailer on there. I have the spunk shad. I like a smaller, thinner tail. I like the action and the way it looks in the water. It's more streamlined. It cleans up the movement of my bait a little bit. Some people like to put craw trailers, and it really puts a wiggle in the back and shows a lot of activity. The fish will tell you what they want. You'll get a couple bites and you'll start to put together a pattern. It's either color or it's flash or it's trailer, or it's all three. The fish will tell you what they want. Okay, just so you guys know, none of the things that I'm showing you today have sponsored me at all. And I'm showing you this only because it was a lifesaver. We went down to Georgia and we had to camp in a tent. I'm 50 years old. I like my toilet. I like my morning routine. I like my coffee. I like all my stuff. And, read between the lines, you know what I mean? Morning routine, read between the lines. But anyway, you get down to Georgia, you're sleeping in a tent, it's cold, you're uncomfortable, you're eating at odd times, your system's out of whack, you're doing things at odd hours of the day, and nature calls, man, and you have to do what you have to do. You're out in the woods, and let's just leave it right there. Let's just leave it right there. Pat brought these things, and they're made more for like taking showers or body washing without like a shower or whatever. But, and my wife used to pack me like little baby wipes, and she'd be like, keep yourself clean, and those aren't great. But these things were amazing. I was like, Pat, you saved my life. They're called Hustle Clean. And I swear to God, I'm not doing an ad for these people. Like I have no affiliation with this company at all, but these things are awesome. They're pre-moisturized. They're thick and they're big and they're washclothy, and they saved my life. Yeah. All that man stank you get on yourself fishing for a couple days together in a tent, it's not a bad thing to have something to clean it up. All right. That's all I got today, man. Chatterbaits, a big old rat looking thing, and, some wipes. That's a bad video. You guys take care. I'll talk to you soon.